Fast Nerdly Podcast presents The Tome Travelers.
Hi, this is John with Passion Nerdly Podcast. Today we are doing a special episode on Tome Traveler, and I have a guest with us tonight. I have Ben Sandfelder. Did I say that right?
Yeah, it's Sandfelder.
Well,
it's nice. Most people mess it up on the first try.
Well, reason that we had you on here today, I actually was introduced to you through Craig with Nerdburger Games.
Yeah, Craig's awesome.
Yeah,
he's been a huge help with this whole project.
Yeah, we've had him on the show twice before, and we're planning on getting him on for Tome Travelers for actually our actual play series, which is called Seriously, Let's Play.
That'll be fun.
But he said that you have a brand new property that you are bringing to the market with a Kickstarter. So tell us a little bit about your property.
Sure. So the game is called Lightning War, and the easiest way to sum it up is it is stopping fascism in a fantasy world's World War II. It plays a little bit like tabletop XCOM with drama and role-playing.
Going on from here, one of the things I love to do when I get creators on the show is I love to talk to them and ask them how they got into gaming, because one of the things I've always found is that people who work in the industry were gamers first. So how did you become a gamer?
So I have been playing video games pretty much as long as I can remember. I got started with old PC games like the Tomb Raider franchise, the original Game Boy.
Wow.
Yeah. In high school, there was a game club where I found out about Magic the Gathering and D&D and games like that, and just got sucked into it in one summer. Like that summer, after my freshman year of high school, I picked up the D&D 4th edition books, learned 4th edition, tried to get a D&D group together the next year, found out, oh, no, you got to try 3.5. Tried 3.5 since it was all online with the SRD, didn't have to buy any more books, thought, oh, this is great, and got into DMing. And by my senior year, the 5th edition playtest was out, and watching the D&D Next playtest evolve and tinkering with it a little bit, I realized that game development was, one, really interesting, and two, something that I actually might be good at. So then after that, I wound up going to college for game development, learning even more about systems and mechanics, but also programming and 3D modeling and things like that. And now I'm on my own kind of freelancing, making stuff like this.
Awesome. So you've done some freelancing in the RPG market?
Just a little bit. I got to do a little bit of work with Baldman Games. I wrote a CCC adventure for Gen Con 2018, I think.
Okay.
It's not on DM's Guild yet. It's still a convention exclusive for now, but it's one of the Moonshay adventures. And then last winter, I did Ashley Warren's fantastic writer workshop, and I wrote an entry in Empty Black's Saltmarsh anthology, too. So not a whole lot yet, but that's mainly because I've been working on this on the side.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you get to know Craig?
I met him at a tiny little Atlanta convention called AndoCon. It was only like 200 participants, and he was one of the guests. I'm trying to remember. I think at some point I got to talking to Eloy Lasanta of Third Eye Games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he introduced me to Craig, and I pitched the two of them a RPG I was working on at the time over lunch. It was this sci-fi project that didn't completely pan out, but it turned into this like hour and a half long brainstorming session, and some of the ideas we came up with in that chat actually made it over into Lightning War.
That's great. No, I'm a huge fan. Obviously, Nerdburger Games and Third Eye Games with Eloy Lasanta. We're actually home to one of the only actual plays for Ninja Crusade by Third Eye Games.
Oh, yeah? I haven't gotten to try that one yet, but I'm a big fan of Part-Time Gods.
Oh, yes. The Part-Time Gods 2nd edition is amazing.
Yeah, I tried it, and it's great. My group had a ton of fun with it.
Well, One of the things that definitely, comes up in this is obviously is a question of the system. So with your game coming out, Lightning War, what kind of system are we looking at here? Craig is definitely known more for the playing cards as being the source of chance in his world, while Eloy has recently really taken off with his chakra system and the pip system. So for your game, what are we looking at as far as system goes?
It's completely original. For me, designing original RPG systems is my favorite part of the process.
Awesome.
So whenever I start working on a game, it's, all right, I know the feel I'm going for. What mechanics can I make to get that feel? So Lightning War uses a system. I don't really have like a cool name for it, like a D20 system or pip system or anything like that. But the premise is it revolves around a difficulty die. Your characters have abilities between 2 and 7, and tasks are assigned a difficulty with a corresponding die. Like, a trivial task is a D4, easy is a D6, challenging is a D8, hard's a D10, difficult is as high as it goes, and that's a D12. And to make a check, you just roll the corresponding difficulty die, and if you get less than or equal to your ability, you succeed.
Okay.
Characters with high enough abilities, like if you've got a 4 or more, you can automatically succeed on trivial tasks. 6 or higher, you automatically pass easy ones. And so it gets to a point where characters are just, hey, I'm good enough at this that I don't even need to roll for the easiest types of checks. And it really speeds things up and keeps things going. So that's a little bit about the system.
Yeah. And so obviously one of the big questions I think some of our listeners are going to want to know is, so what is the game?
So the game is in a high fantasy world's World War II. There's this, getting ahead of myself there. No. So it's this high fantasy setting. Think like your average D&D with, this ancient reincarnating evil. Some Dark Lords corrupted a thing. And ever since, it's been reincarnations of those Dark Lords, just more and more distorted memories almost of these old bad guys. And the latest iteration decided to try something different, took a much stealthier, less Sauron-like approach, and started doing all this behind-the-scenes political stuff. Next thing everyone knows, the world is hurtling into this very World War II-like situation where, it's still a fantasy world, but technology has been allowed to advance farther than anyone has ever seen before, and now World War II is breaking out.
While it's fantasy, though, some of the art that I've seen also lends more towards a modern-esque fantasy.
Yeah, it's definitely got a modern swing on it. Right next to your wizards and elves and dwarves and all of that, you have tanks and planes and submachine guns. There's cars, electric lighting. All of the technology of the 1940s is there because, the timeline's moved forward. We're not in that kind of high fantasy, anachronistic medieval thing anymore. It's the 20th century, just in one of these fantasy worlds.
Building on all this, and obviously going into this world, character creation is going to be, I think, one of the big questions. How are you all doing it? Are you more open, like everybody plays a character and creates it from the ground up, or is it a class set that, obviously you've also listed off a few races such as elves, dwarves, humans, things of that nature. How are you going about character creation with the game?
So an important thing to know about Lightning War is that each player doesn't just get one character. You actually control a team of characters. You have your specialist, who's your main character, who you build out like a regular D&D character almost. And then you have 2 grunts, who are these helpful tag-along NPCs. I guess they're not NPCs. They're these helpful tag-along characters who give your character some extra abilities while they're still alive. I say that because while they're not exactly expendable, grunts are kind of there to get killed off dramatically, but I'll come back to that later. The way your specialist works is you pick a species, and there's 5 options there, and those all have some interesting features. Halflings are, really small, so they can't use the biggest weapons, but when you don't have any grunts remaining, when it's just your specialist, you become very hard to hit because you're such a small target. There's Cinderfolk, who have all this supernatural power over fire. Dwarves get dark vision, and they're really good at navigating underground or in enclosed spaces. stuff like that. And then you also pick a role in the squad for your specialist, and that's where you get into stuff like, there's engineers who are very good at blowing stuff up, scouts who are kind of your rogue sniper type, but depending on how you build them, they can also be more of a wilderness explorer skirmisher type. Every role has a selection of perks you can choose from, and leveling up, there's not a whole lot of stat change in Lightning War. Your low-level characters and your high-level characters aren't super different mechanically. The main difference is just the number of perks you have, and therefore the number of options available to your character.
Okay. Building on that, especially the idea, I guess, companions, these grunts, what do you feel like an ideal table size is for this game? Do you have an idea of, would you say 4 people at a table, or...
Yeah, so I built the game with, your normal 4 to 6 table size involved. The idea behind the companion characters is usually 4 to 6 players. A squad of soldiers is typically 10 to 12. So the grunt characters add those extra members to the squad in a way, so that it checks out from a tactical, historical perspective. But it doesn't add too much extra complexity onto the player side of things. These minor characters, they still have some really powerful abilities, and they're still a resource that players can, but generally sit on the sidelines. And when they do taking the initiative in the plot, it's usually because something's happened to your special or has to step up to the plate.
Okay, awesome. I was wondering about that. So the number of characters that you can have, I mean, it basically does turn into a military squad. With the way that you're setting this up with combat and everything else, which is probably going to be a very big part of this game because of the setting, is this going to be more of a theater of the mind kind of game? Is this designed more for table mats and things?
I really wanted to find a way to make Lightning War work theater of the mind, and while you can play it that way, it really is at its best when you're playing it. You don't necessarily need mini because the game doesn't use the same scale that you usually see. The game really is at its best when you're playing on a map. And one thing, I haven't gotten to try this yet, but it's possible. In theory, you could also play Lightning War on a terrain table, like a Warhammer 40K board, really well.
That brings us to, obviously, the next big point here is that it's launched as a Kickstarter now.
Yes.
So Kickstarter just kicked off this week, which today I believe is the 6th, right?
Yep.
And so are you going to go for a full month, or what's the plan on that?
Yeah, so the Kickstarter started yesterday, November 5th, and it's going to be running until December 5th.
December 5th. Now, different goals for the Kickstarter?
A little bit. So the base tier is just a $15. You get the PDF and a link to get a book at cost later. The higher level tiers are basically just a bundle. You get 4 copies. So one person buys it. Everyone in the group gets a book. Maybe a group. Maybe you can convince your friends to pitch in for that. If not, it's just in time for the holidays. Get some extra books as a gift or something. Okay. The final tier, which already sold out, is I run a 2-hour mission for your group online.
Wow.
I had 4 of those available, and they were gone in 3 hours.
Nice. Congratulations on that.
I'm really excited about that part.
That said, with the Kickstarter and everything else going, and you mentioned holidays and getting it then, so is the book already complete?
So I said holidays. That's the book itself won't actually be ready until around May, but the game itself is more or less in its final stages of testing. I've been working on it for probably on and off about a year and a half, and mechanically it's all there. It's just about ready to go. There's a couple little tweaks we're still figuring out. So the book is almost entirely written.
Another question on that with the book. So with it being written, artwork. The picture that you have up currently, definitely very eye-catching, and I think displays some of the different ideas of what you've got going on in the world.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about your artists.
So artist, it's just the one.
Okay.
It's a it's a really good friend from college who I've been playing D&D with for years, named Ray. And she's just spectacular. We've been going back and forth about, we had a lot of talk early on about, how much artwork she was willing to do for the game, how much detail she'd be able to go into for it. all these conversations about nailing the look and everything. I always thought, like, oh no, I'm just going to be bombarding her with all this stuff. But she's nailed every single piece of artwork. I'm blown away by what she's been able to do with the ideas.
It's always good to bring in new artists into the role-playing sphere, especially right now with how the entire sphere is developing. I'm very happy to see the market thrive right now, and obviously new creators, new writers such as yourself coming into it. So
yeah, it's definitely exciting.
Yeah. You have this book coming out. Do you have any future plans with this system?
I keep going back and forth on that. Like I said, my favorite part of the entire process is designing systems. Mm-hmm. So I think for whatever future projects I work on, mm-hmm. I'd want to, make my own systems for those projects. But the game already has a system. It's already a pretty solid system, just a huge, arguably the most important part of this entire game is you mentioned this at the beginning, and I mentioned it in all of the pitches, is, this game is about fascism and stuff. It's definitely political in that kind of respect, and I don't want that to really get downplayed.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, and it's serious and it sucks all the fun out of it a little bit, but the bottom line of the game is that these ideas, xenophobia, that kind of ultra-nationalism, mm-hmm. All of those kinds of ideas are these insidious, toxic things that can turn everyday people into monsters. That's a major theme of the game, to the point where in the game's universe, fascism actually is this force that turns people into mindless servants of a literal Dark Lord. But one of the things the game does is it doesn't necessarily downplay that. You have, the villains in the game are all intelligent, smart, completely ruthless, but completely rational. And the way you win, the way good wins in this setting is by being even smarter, even more creative, and just better than the bad people. And I think that's an important part of the game, too. It's all about being vigilant around these extremely dangerous philosophies and not letting them take root in your community.
Awesome. So, it's very topical, obviously, to paralleling real world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I got the idea for the game after Charlottesville.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when actual Nazis were parading in the streets again. So,
yep.
Yeah, it's a topical game.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to get downplayed or lost either.
No, I think that would, it overall does a disservice to games. I myself, obviously, grew up in the South, here in the United States. And for me, I cannot say that there was a safe space growing up where certain topics were not talked about, or certain topics were, other ideas were introduced to me. But I will say that through games, other ideas were introduced to me, concepts of race, and the way that we look at other people and treat other people who are different to us. I can ascribe a lot of my background on that to gaming. As well as thoughts on minorities, thoughts on indigenous people rights. These are all things that I learned through gaming because I didn't really have that exposure in my community. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So games are a extremely immersive form of entertainment. Games allow you to put yourself in the shoes of another character in a way that film and books almost can't even compare to.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when you're watching a movie, you're still watching a character. When you're playing a game, you are that character. Whatever happens to that character is happening to you. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I wanted to do in Lightning War, though, is in real life, World War II got a little bit more morally ambiguous than people really want to admit. When we look back at it, it's very clear, oh yeah, we were the good guys. The Nazis are obviously the bad guys. But at the same time, there were incidents, like entire things like farmers on the West Coast explicitly sent a letter to FDR saying that the only reason for Japanese internment was so that they could steal their farmland. There's a lot of historical debate about whether or not dropping the atomic bomb on Japan was justified or not.
Yeah.
The USSR was on our side, but they were also doing a lot of terrible things. And one of the things I wanted to do in Lightning War is, by setting it in this original high fantasy setting, I can leave behind a lot of that baggage and create a setup where, you know, the good nations are unambiguously good. They're places where diversity and variety in culture and all of those things are celebrated, you know, places where anyone can be welcome, almost like the idealized, you know, ruby glasses version of America that we learn about in like elementary school. Mm-hmm. I can actually make that in a fictional setting, and it can work because it's fantasy. But at the same time, by having that kind of absolute good in the setting, it goes even further to contrast the way that evil can kind of disguise itself.
Yeah.
And one of the things Lightning War really does is it shows the way that these ideas can infiltrate and subvert what is otherwise a perfectly functional society.
That definitely makes sense. And it's a serious topic, but at the same time, the idea is to, you know, generate fun and at the same time, I guess, learn something.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it definitely sucks all the fun out of it when you tack that footnote on there of, oh, hey, by the way, this is serious stuff. But it is serious stuff. And you said it was a disservice earlier. Mm-hmm. I think it's almost irresponsible to make a game based on World War II without acknowledging the fact that a lot of the things we were fighting to protect back then are being dismantled right now.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, it's some heavy stuff to talk about. But with this, you're obviously launching into gaming with the goal of making new systems and everything else. Have you gotten an idea, or as far as what you're going to label yourself under? Are you going to pretty much use your name or your moniker, or are you going to start up a company?
I've been playing around with that. Right now, my my portfolio website is Games-Inc. Inc. with a K, because I've kind of got this system designer yet also creative writer thing combo going on. The official title for it is narrative design. It's this subset of game design that's about designing mechanics that support a game's theme. I think that's the best title for the kind of game development I do.
Yeah.
But as far as branding myself and making a company, I haven't quite decided which way I want to go with that right now. I think the main hope is that projects like this are going to show off what I can do as a designer and what I can do as a writer, and, just strengthen my portfolio for getting other jobs in the industry, more freelancing opportunities, stuff like that.
Awesome. Definitely a great way to get in. And honestly, I look forward to seeing where this goes. I checked in on the Kickstarter earlier, and, just to reiterate for everyone out there, going through December 5th, be sure to go and check it out. We've been putting it out on social media, and I think it looks really good. Definitely a genre that I think could be getting a takeoff. Fantasy World War kind of genre is starting to come out. Never Going Home hit big last year. I think that this could be a big one going into this year. And
it definitely seems like that's the kind of cool and new right now, that sort of modern-ish fantasy genre. So it really feels like the perfect time to be launching this game. And I've been blown away by the amount of support I got on day one. I'm so grateful to everyone who's already backed the project, and I'm really excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off here, but be sure to go by and check out the Kickstarter going right now. Link will be in our show notes, and then you also said you had a website for your portfolio, which was...
Games-Inc. with a K at the end. It looks better written down. I'll type it up for you.
Yeah, no, I like it. But we'll also have that in our show notes, and be sure to go by and check them out. And it was great to talk to you today.
Yeah, it was great getting to talk to you too. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. All right, be sure to go by.
All right, thanks.
presents The Tome Travelers.